I think we just met, Marsha Connor.
I'm Loic Marcus.
Okay.
So you,
I'm Bruce. Yeah.
Bruce. Okay.
I'm Delaney Casa.
Okay, so let me just tell you a little bit about me. I grew up in South Carolina. I did not go to school there. I went to a private college called Talladega in Alabama. A little small. At the time, it was called the Little Harvard of the South for the HBCUs. Then I decided to go to the University of Cincinnati, which really wasn't my first choice. I really wanted to go to Carnegie Mellon. I got accepted at Carnegie Mellon. I got accepted at the University of Cincinnati. Carnegie Mellon. All of a sudden, Cincinnati calls, right? They give me everything. Go to school. Books, transportation. I got a job at City Hall. What else could you do? Right? Internship during the summer was paid for through working at City. Majored in urban planning. Then it was called Masters of Community Planning. It was in the Department of Design, Architect, and Art. And I worked 20 hours at City Hall, and so I worked in the budget office. I was assigned there. And so lots of curiosity about numbers and things like that. So part of that was kind of the reason why I wanted to go to Carnegie Mellon. Analytics and type of graduate school that it was. But needless to say, I had a great experience in the budget office. I ended up writing my thesis on target budgeting. And 2 years there, I got a scholarship to go to the International City Managers Conference. It was in Anaheim, California. And they were like, oh, take an extra week, go to the conference and take some extra days. I was like, really, right? So when I was there, one of the things that happened is that they had in their office, I don't know, it was a group that really were looking to encourage people of color to go into city management. And so they were like, what are you going to do when you finish? I said, I'm going into consulting, and I'm going to work for a consulting firm. I said, well, have you considered possibly going to professional internships? I said, professional internships? So I was like, oh. So when I came out, the economy was horrible. And I worked in the budget office. So there was it's called PAMS, which was planning and math, statistical something. And it was related to planning, but it did a lot of stats and things like that. So they had one position on, but I just knew that was going to be my job. And the budget cuts came and they cut the job. I was like, oh my gosh. So I was interested in these professional internship programs. So I interviewed in Dallas, I interviewed in Long Beach, I interviewed in Chicago for Miami-Dade County, and I interviewed for the state of New York, and I interviewed for Arizona. And what you find is a profession, you start seeing the same people interviewing for some of the same jobs. So I was like, oh, I interviewed, I'm done, because I was up against this person who used to work for the District of Columbia. I was like, oh, no way. And then she was a department director in Arlington, right? So here I am, the budget director, interviewing against her. So I'm like, I can get this job. So anyway, she ends up not getting the job. I got the job. This is the city manager office. So that was probably about the best experience I had. That and working in Arlington County. And so then for some reason, I don't know, somebody gave my name to the people in Durham. Let's start with your question.
Talk a little about having all these bright people under you and so much going on. In times of crisis like that, how did you handle managing people, organizing people?
Well, it's really something. So I was considered like an outsider, right? Durham was very, most people who worked there either grew up there, went to school there, people knew them. So the city manager before me, I believe, came from California. So this was the second time they hired someone who wasn't with them. But the reason why I think they hired me is I was in Austin, and this was the Raleigh-Durham area, right? So they were kind of competing about being some of the best cities, Raleigh, Durham area, Research Triangle, and Austin, right? I thought that too. Oh, I'm going to Durham where they compete with Austin. Very, very different. Very, very different. The approaches to the city was very, very different. One of the things I would say that happened, so when you have sort of a scandal like that, it happens when someone first comes in, and you have an organization that hasn't really terminated people. Just remember, these people were seen, very bright people in the community. The toughest one to terminate, honestly, was the person who was in housing. Her husband had left. He was a regional director of the Economic Development Regional opportunities for the region. And she was just doing a lot of good work, but that was a lapse in judgment. And that lapse in judgment was a cause of $1 million+ that's a big deal, right? And so what happened, I think in that situation, she was offered the opportunity to resign. And we did that. The assistant manager, who was over all of them, pretty much gave him a time frame to start looking for a job, right? So it created actually opportunity for me in terms of hiring other new people, but also promoting from within. And so, you looked at the team in terms of the people who were there. There were two assistant managers. One had applied for the city manager job. And from my understanding, he had applied for that position more than once. So at that time, he actually ended up getting a job and being the city manager, assistant city manager. So he left, and the guy who was over the team, I transitioned him out, gave him an opportunity to move. So I let people go, but I let them go with dignity, recognizing the number of years of service they had, But at this point, this is a huge. I mean, if I had done nothing, I probably would have. My 3 years would have been shorter. It probably would have lasted 6 months. So that's what we had to do. And it was an organization that never had changed like that happened that quickly. And so one of the things that happened, which I thought was great, when I came, I started meeting with the key leaders of the community, Chamber, Duke University, Carolina Central, Technical Community College, the person in Housing Authority. In Durham, they have a lot of what I call political committees that have a lot of influence on elections, zoning, location, very powerful. So I made sure I met, spoke to them. And so part of that is I met with the president at Duke, and at the time, it was Nan Cohan, and she said, "What can I do to help you be successful?" And I said, well, one of the things I think is we really need to change the culture of the organization and become what I consider a high-performing organization. And she said, well, what do you think I could do to help you do that? I said, well, we really don't have the bench strength in terms of organizational development. If you could elevate it, the professionalism and things like that, which is one of the things that the council charged me with, I could use some help there. And so she made a recommendation for me to speak to the folks at GlaxoSmithKline. And they had an OD, a magnificent OD section, organization development, and they assigned it to me for about 6 months. And so I took the management team. Some new people I hired, assistant city manager, hired probably like an assistant too in my office. I brought him as a part of the team. He was a great people person, right? Great people person. So began to shape the team that I had in terms of the assistant city managers, assistant twos, and thinking about the people who were going to help me do the leadership. One of the assistants I hired had an HR background. So she was going to be very helpful with me in terms of putting this together. So, we really took them through this whole process of leadership development, how you become a better team. And we did that type of work for about 6 months. And then we started working on the culture of the organization, the values and those different things. And, but to get the buy-in, we started with the management team. Then we did some sessions where we bring certain levels of people of different departments in and begin to do these trainings that we were doing on the culture of the organization. We even had like ice cream. Once we all agreed on what those key values are going to be, how we're going to measure them, we went through, I guess I'd say we went on the road show, right? So we went to the various departments, we did ice cream things, or you would come out and have ice cream, then we do presentations and we talk about it. So we went from, we might go to the Parks and Rec department, then we may have gone to water and sewer. We did to different departments and began to train people. We actually even brought in uh, cultural customer service individual who trained the folks at Disney, right? He came up with the whole culture of how do you do customer service because we were moving from a 911 system. We created a 311 system, with the city, and we did things like that. So some of that was building and helping to build a culture, but it was also taking a team that was there and showing them the possibilities. So, and I ended up making some changes in terms of new people. I got to hire a solid waste director. Some people didn't want to do it, so they left, right? The police chief surprised me. She was one of the ones. She was the first female police chief. She was actually from Maryland. She actually ended up going to Maryland Parks and Rec or something. But she left after 6 months, which I was really surprised because I really liked working with her. And the hiring of the police chief became a challenge. It was a challenge. And people always ask me, if you had to go back and do it again, would you? And I fundamentally would say, I probably would not have done it differently. Because I just believe if I can't look at the police chief in the eye and believe that he's going to be the person that everybody in the city is going to rally around, I can't hire you as a chief. And I remember a council member saying to me when we closed the American Tobacco deal, and he made a comment to me. He said, "Do you see all the work that you've done? We should be celebrating this." And instead, we're still talking about that police chief. And he said, "I think you could have let that go." I said, "Really?" But I have to, you have to have, I think, some sense of who you are. And that was just something I just could not do. And it was a tough decision because I'm telling you, I couldn't go anywhere in North Carolina. Instead, people knew my name. We were all over television. It so much so people were like, "That's Marsha, that's Marsha." I was like, "Oh my goodness." I go down to the beach. And even in South Carolina, I go to the beach. "We saw you on TV, da, 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 da." So it was an experience, but I don't think some of that I would have changed. The question is, would I have, my boss when I left Austin told me, "Leave your job open for 6 months. So if you want to come back, you can come back." I almost, after the first day, feeling that sense of HUD, can I go back? Because I was like, I just knew something was wrong there. But anyway.
So how did that intense experience so early on affect your leadership style now?
Well, what I would say was I would say that did I act too quickly? So now I'm probably a little more thoughtful in terms of some of the things that I do. Between the time of being a city manager and all the challenges that were happening in the city, and it was almost like a laboratory. You could touch anything, and it was broken, and it needed to be fixed, or something needed to be changed. Probably I would have slowed down some of the change. I don't think that the team or the community, I think, was probably ready for the change at the level that we were changing. There were a lot of economic development projects that were going on, so that was key to a certain part of the community. But there were other projects. I mean, the city had a crime problem, right? So you got to have a police chief. So you got to work on that. That happened when it was not one of the things I thought I'd be walking into, having to hire a chief. Then that took a lot of time. And then you had quality of life issues in certain communities and things like that. So you had segments of the community pushing expectations to get things done. We had a lot going on at one time. And so maybe if I were going to go back and think about, probably be a little more thoughtful about the timing of some of those decisions. Some of them were just happening before I even got to Durham. They were calling me, "We're working on this. What do you think?" I was like, "Look, I have projects to finish in Austin. Can I get finished before I come there?" And so, probably a little more thoughtfulness in terms of the things that were done. I think I made some great hires when I look at it. I moved to assistant director after we had the fiasco with the housing. We created an audit department so that we would start doing audits and regularly would rotate and look at processes in the city and try to improve them. She actually just retired as a city manager. So she moved from, taking her, who was a finance person, budget person, put her in audit. Um, I put in some of the professional development programs. Actually came to one, she did one for NFBPA, Executive Leadership Institute, and you could just see her blossom. And then from there, she was hired as an assistant city manager. She became the city manager. So some of those seeds you planted, you see grow. There's a gentleman we hired in the budget office, but didn't have a lot of diversity in the budget office, and he was one of the first. Two of them were one of the first to be hired in the budget office. He just got named county manager. I think it takes a lot to do that. Making sure you have the right combination of teams. I'm just also a believer that teams ought to be made up of people they bring diverse things to the team, right? You look at different strengths, you think about what you need on the project and put different people together. And, there's that storming that happens as a part of being in a team and just figuring out how people can work together. And so I have to tell you, some of it is intuitive, but some of it is that you think about what a project really needs. Like when I came to the American Tobacco Project, you had two people negotiating, and I was like, oh, we need to bring in some other people. We need somebody in finance. You need the attorney at the table. We need somebody who has great economic development. So they had just hired a really great economic development director. And we began to put together like a strong team of people because here we are against a developer, a strong developer. And actually, when I came, the developer had the upper hand on the deal. And I was like, oh, no, we're going to have how many garages? I said, and we're supposed to be promoting smart transit. I said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to reduce this from 5, have one on the north end, one on the south end. And okay, you have a performing arts theater. You need to have a garage. So thinking through that, being able to figure out what you need for a team to get a project done, and making sure you have the right people to work with to do that. It's the same thing here in our office. We have a really small team, and so we use a great combination of people who are contractors and consultants with the complement of the team we have. And it just works. People can't believe we pull off a conference that we do, and they always think it's just me and Berto. But there are 3 of us who live in Washington, and since COVID, most of our folks really are working someplace else, and we really don't. We meet every Monday on a Teams meeting, Zoom Teams meeting, and we go around. We talk about successes. Folks talk about their projects. We just did a debrief on our conference. What went well, what didn't go well, and I also tried to push us to do things that are different. I think about a lot. They say, well, Marsha, how do you know? I said, I read a lot in terms of things, and we always try to benchmark. I go to different conferences to really see what's the state of art. You read, you get engaged. For us, it's the public sector, right? So I'm constantly trying to figure out keeping that eye and that ear open in terms of what do people need for leadership development. What are the things that we're doing? And I just happen to have also a very good board of people who are leaders in their community. And some of the ideas are theirs, some of the ideas are mine, but also when you bring a good mix of people in, also you use their ideas too. And that probably, I hear people say a lot, wow, in the time that you've been here, the organization has changed. Look at you doing more conferences. And so part of it is that I tried to figure out why is a conference not going? And I realized we were doing things that only people who would come present were people who were members. Well, if you're only using members, you're not expanding outside of your little bubble to get other people to come and participate. And so what we do now is we have what I call subject matter experts. We get people in economic development, we make it in housing, we might get people in social services, we get people in public safety, IT, and say, okay, what are the things you think that local governments need? And so someone will say, well, this is what we're talking about. And they've done such a great job of coming up with the areas of expertise or topics that you think people would want to participate in. So we put out like a call, and we have the topics we want, and then people come and match it. It makes it so much easier to determine what those projects are. And the subject matter experts, they come back, some of them, after they help shape it, some are evaluators. And so we evaluate them and basically cut off, if you're lower than a 4, you don't get to go there. And so it has really helped us grow our cadre of product and what we sell, what we provide to our members.
I'd like to ask a question regarding any of your projects. Like, how important do you find that your project is, the group of people that are composed in your project that work towards the same goal, how important is that their diverse backgrounds and cultures and like their way of thinking, like how much does that make a difference in the growth of the project?
So I'm a true believer that everybody doesn't have to be me, right? I think having diverse ideas and diverse people, diverse talents really is what makes projects work well. You know, we don't need another Marshall on the team when Marshall's sitting at the table, right? I need you because you're a big picture thinker. I need you because you pay attention to detail. I need you because you're a great idea person. And I need you because you're always going to challenge what we're doing, right? You're going to ask the why, what's the why? So when you bring different people together like that, I just think it makes for a better product. Now there's going to be some storming, right? But I think in the end, you kind of come together and you have to have good facilitation in terms of letting people do that and work on the things that they want to work on.
How the competition and communication between you and other leaders, and I want to learn about is it any much earlier experiences from your family or education background contribute?
You know, that's kind of interesting. I've always been a curious person. You know, I like new experiences. You know, we just went to San Francisco. We do 2 site visits when we go visit a city. And so the team was like, well, what do you think we're going to do? I said, I think we got to go to Sausalito. Sausalito? I said, yes. Have you heard about Sausalito? So take people on different experiences. So when we came back the second time, we're going back to Sausalito. You know, it's like, if y'all want to. But, you know, my issue, I've always been curious about things, right? I learned how to sell probably when people like me don't sell, right? I like to be challenged. I like new things. And sometimes I like to push the envelope. And I would tell you right now, one of the things that I think we're behind the 8 ball on as an organization. I got to figure out how to incorporate some AI stuff in what we do, right?
Yeah.
And so I've been thinking in the back of my mind, we have some corporate sponsors I know that want to talk to me. I think 3 years ago I had one talk about bots. And Marsha, you know, we need to talk about bots, and I think we can help you with that. Let's spend some time. Well, that was like 3 years ago, and you know, that's moving faster than we are really thinking. So I'm always trying to think of you got to be ahead. And I guess just curiosity sometimes is curiosity, but it's also been here for 43 years. And so we've seen a lot and we've changed. And so I think you have to build teams, you have to build people want to change. Even leadership, you know, sometimes you have a leader who can bring you to this base, right? Then you have a leader who can make you grow. So you have to think about where you are in terms of leadership, where the organization is, the complement of people. Because organizations change. And so I think it's really important to stay attuned to that.
Thank you.
So much for your time.
Well, and you know, we talked a lot.
So, does everyone want to share one more insight as to what stood out to them?
I'd like to say that, at least for me, what stood out was I noticed how much she knows about the industry and how much experience she's had, and it was nice to listen to someone that knows as much, which is not regular for me, at least not just about not just listening to teachers, but like just professionals as it is. It was nice.
Yeah, I agree. This is like a quite brand new industry that we haven't touched in our class, right? So it's good to hear, and I like the experiences of interaction and communication between her and other leaders, members of her team, or when she came to Durham as like an outside leader or something. That's like interesting story. That's like I haven't expected this kind of interesting stories because we want to talk. I mean, we like what we consider like focus is mostly want to say like leadership or something that I think she mentioned the importance of the communication and
Yeah.
the connection skills and how she make the connection with those different kinds of people.
I thought the details about the loan business too, like what happened with the basically loan fraud, was really interesting too. Which is I also asked a question about too. Was like what was this? You know, it's like that was to me really interesting, and just all their experiences together were super fascinating. It was really cool to hear about all of them too. So yeah,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the fact that so early on in her career, she started on and she was city manager by 28, and then having to deal with a crisis as big as that, I feel like has made her the leader she is today. And I also like the fact that she said if that didn't happen, she wouldn't be as thoughtful of a leader as she was today. So, what do you think about her management style from what we saw when we interviewed her? What kind of leader do you guys think she is?
I think she's a very charismatic leader. She to me she gave off that vibe, I guess you want to say, right, of someone who's like been in the business a long time, knows a lot about it, has clearly mentored a lot of people, has been mentored herself by very influential people as well, and she knows her stuff. You know, she knows what she's talking about. She knows how to motivate people. She knows how to include people from very diverse backgrounds. She knows how to gather people together. Very powerful figure, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I also really love the fact that when we asked her about the people and how she's um, been a leader, or the people she's led before, she remembered people specifically
Yeah,
and where they are now and how she still kept in contact with them when this could be 30 years ago, but she still looks at their achievements at her own and she's still a leader to them. That's wonderful.
Yeah. There's a level of professionalism to it, but there's also a level of like human connection and compassion
Absolutely.
that brings people together. And she's clearly brought a lot of people together, and she still remembers them. They still remember her. So it's clearly that's a very good sign of a good leader too.
I mean, say like she still considered them as a member of her so-called family in her work experience, right?
Yeah.
Like each family member she remembers so well, and also learn more, try to learn more about the continuous experience of them.
Yeah, I was going to say that through what you guys all said, I noticed that she's a leader that values experiences a lot. Basically, she remembers everyone. She remembers all of her interactions, all of her moments of growth, and that's something that it's very highlighted when she talks, and something that I noticed like when she started talking.
Yeah, I also really loved her passion in what she was doing, where she has such a variety of experience. When I was doing my research, she has, well, I'm mostly consulting, and she's been city manager elsewhere and assistant city manager in Austin. But the passion she has when she talks about public administration and when she talks about Durham and her experiences there, it shows that if you really love something, you can be a good leader at it.
I must say the curiosity thing she mentioned at the end is like, I mean, we all have like curiosity about learning something new, but whether we can find the one that we really feel have passion and try to work hard, really hard, and be completely into it is like really hard thing. I mean, it's a long pathway for us to
Yeah.
try different new things, connect with different kinds of people, and consider think about more diverse types of ideas.
I think one of the stories that stood out to me when she was talking about too was about when she was selecting a new police chief for the city too. I mean, I think she made it clear that she was not like a huge, fan of the city coming into it. She was not like, exactly extremely excited about the position. She was kind of, recommended to it, but she took it up anyways. But she took it seriously when she had the position too. She was not going to just choose anybody to be the police chief. She needed to know that she could trust them when she made that selection.
The responsibility.
Yeah, it showed a lot of her responsibility towards the positions.
Absolutely. And also going into that, when she walked into this crisis and it wasn't even a role she had really wanted, but she still had the dignity to treat people with respect, even when they had wronged her, even when they had been involved in a scandal, she still showed strength in letting them go and decisiveness, but also still kept their dignity, still kept the respect, still kept the image that they had in her.
I mean, that's why she gets so-called like a very cooperative team. That the
Yeah.
loyalty of those team members actually.
Yeah. I agree.
Do you feel like I personally feel like all the questions that were on our sheet got answered? Like I know we didn't
Yeah,
ask all of them, but a lot of
absolutely.
them were just answered by what she was talking about too.
Yeah.
So
She did have a copy of the questions beforehand.
yeah,
I
yeah.
let her.
Okay.
I think that I picked up on the fact that she had definitely read
Yeah.
through the questions. As she was talking, she was showing one point down there, and then she mentioned strategic planning. So yeah, she had definitely read through the copy too, which was very helpful. Also, because like it moved it along. Quite honestly, like in interviews, you want people to feel comfortable. You want the person you're interviewing to like not be completely bombarded with questions. You want them to talk at their own pace. And I think that was fine. I think like us asking like a single question to help move it along to other topics was fine. Overall, I think we did a good job.
Absolutely. And, we were supposed to have a 20-minute interview. We went ahead and said a 30-minute interview. We had an hour-long interview.
Yeah.
So I think we learned so much from her. And this was a wonderful experience.
And why the way she prepared so well for our interview is like
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
also
the
a
way
new
she.
friend.
I think that's the way she will also like the whole work experiences. So
Yes.
that will make her teammate and her like other collaborators very comfortable in communicating with her because she already knows what's your question and we go directly into the question and you will feel so much comfortable. You don't need all the context because she already prepared for it.
Exactly, and she took the time to learn about us and hear about our background, and also the fact that I don't know if you guys noticed, but how engaged Roberto and some of her other employees seemed.
Yes.
The people that work under her look genuinely happy to be there.
Yeah, I was very. This is not meant to be like offensive, but like it was just I was weirded out by how happy they were. I've never met people so happy before
Yeah.
in my life. It was definitely the happiest people I've seen at a business. That's for sure.
And there's a kind of encouragement that
Yeah.
she's like very optimistically
Yes.
encourage us to try and to be passionate about this world and don't lose the thing there.
Yeah, I think I got asked how much. Like, I think we got asked if we wanted to drink like 5 times or so. You want some coffee water? You want some coffee water? Yeah, I don't mind that, of course, but it's like it shows like
They're
the
there,
hospital.
they're engaged.
They're there. Yeah.
And I feel like one thing to take away from the interview is about her piece of advice where be curious and how her curiosity got her to meet some of the people, got her to grow the conference that they have yearly and everything. And I think being curious is the one thing I took away from this, where to be a good leader, she had to set up that investigative auditor and everything. Just be curious in everything that you do and everything that you
Yes, she's really with the world that growing so fast, and
Yeah.
she's also so much curiosity and passion in learning about new stuff like the AI bots, those things you mentioned, and incorporating into her some of programs.
I thought it was interesting too, like how open, like that was my big takeaway was like her open mindedness to a lot of positions
Yeah.
that she's had,
Yes.
and also people too. Even though she leads the National Forum for Black Impact, Black Public Administrators. A lot of some of the people she was talking about, like she hired, were not were for diverse backgrounds. They were not purely of one ethnicity or culture. She was looking for people that fit the position, but also like to increase diversity. She wanted more thought. It was an approach I really learned a lot from.
Yeah, absolutely. And also how when she, as a leader, she knows how to recognize someone who's good at their job, and how she said for multiple people that she mentioned, she created a place for them in her institution, where she found Roberto as a temp, where she found her economic manager also as a temp, and she brought them in, and she knew how to recognize when a person fit in her organization. And I think that was beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that we talk about in class. Is like work, professional work skills or relationship. I would say that she is really, how to say, really connect the network that build up really successful relationship with different people.